This factors a lot into the psychology of cycle recycle trading and the psychology of achieving compound returns in general. The cycle recycle trade, it's kind of a strange bird in a lot of ways if you think about it, because it kind of requires sort of a hybrid mindset, a trader mindset and an investor mindset. It's this long-term payoff, right? Because we talked about cycles, right? You're making a lot of little trades over and over again. Sell this call, roll it, sell this call, roll it, get a sign, sell this put, roll it, sell this put, roll it, get a sign, sell this call. And you do a big long cycle of these that could last years, and that's the payoff. And the problem is that all those trades don't work out perfectly. A lot of times you have to buy them back for more than you paid for them.
Hello, Wealth Builders. You're listening to Wealth Building with Options. Here's your host, Dan Passarelli.
Hey, Wealth Building family. Welcome to episode 36, Crossing the Red Dragon. But before we jump in today, let's talk about how you can get the most out of the Wealth Building with Options community. First, subscribe to it in your favorite podcast app. And if you're already a listener, you can support the show with a paid subscription. And when you do, you get a whole bunch of great stuff. First, you get video extra podcast episodes, so you can get hands-on video training on things we talk about on the podcast. Subscriber-only posts, where I drill down on a stock, event, or trading opportunity and share trade ideas. You'll get all my covered call and cash-secured put trades that I'm making in my real brokerage account. You'll get access to our monthly Ask Me Anything webinar, and you'll get our unusual options activity alerts on income trades, and you'll get so much more. And the best part is, your paid subscription helps keep this show on the air. So I'd like to take a minute to thank our newest paid subscribers. First of all, a big warm welcome and thank you to Christine. Christine, thank you so much for being a paid subscriber. Luca, thanks, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Zach, Denny, and Leon, thank you all for your financial contribution to keep the show on the air and for having a deeper relationship with the Wealth Building with Options community and getting all that extra content. To join this list of Wealth Building paid subscribers, just go to wealthbuildingpodcast.com. That's wealthbuildingpodcast.com and choose your subscription level. Man, isn't it crazy where life takes you sometimes? I mean, when I was in college, I used to walk down to the Chicago Board of Trade building when the visitors gallery was open to the public. I would just watch what's going on, wonder about what are those guys doing in the pit, yelling and screaming and flashing their hand signals. Fast forward maybe 5 years later, and I was standing in the pit, yelling and screaming, flashing hand signals. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Well, fast forward about another 10 or 15 years, and I find myself on the other side of the world as a result of all this. So I got myself somehow or another, ended up getting an invitation to the Chicago Board Option Exchange's Risk Management Conference, the RMC. Now, this is it's a big deal global event with people from all the major banks there and the CBOE. And I don't know, I was definitely a little fish in a big pond there. But they asked me to come out and to give a talk there, and it actually worked out with my schedule. Just after that, I actually had to be in Dalian, China, which is way, way, way up north, all the way across the Middle Kingdom, the other side of the Red Dragon, up where the area they used to call Manchuria is. Had to go all the way from Hong Kong up to Manchuria before I even went home. So, anyway, if you have ever traveled from like the middle of the United States to Hong Kong, it takes a long time to get there. And I forget if they have a direct flight there. I imagine they probably don't. It's anywhere from like a 14-hour if it's nonstop to, gosh, who knows, 20 hours if you got to make a layover. So it's a long day of traveling. Now, I mean, I would usually sleep on the plane because when I'd get invited to go out to these things in China, I'd tend to get business class. They'd pay for business class for me. So a couple glasses of wine, recline the seats, and you wake up in Asia, right? But nonetheless, you're still pretty darn tired. I mean, it's a lot of traveling. Sitting takes it out of you, right? The altitude. So I get to the hotel in Hong Kong. I check in. I let the guy, Paul, who invited me, know that I'm there. He says, hey, let's go out and grab some Cantonese food. I said, all right, that sounds pretty good. Get Cantonese food where it comes from? Sure, I can do that. And we had a nice meal. And then he says, hey, what do you say we get one little nightcap before bed? And normally I'm not opposed to such a thing, but I was kind of tired, but I didn't want to be rude. So I said, oh, sure, let's go. We'll go have one. So we go to the hotel lobby bar or whatever, and we're sitting there. And this guy walks up to us, tall guy, as I remember correctly. He says to Paul, oh, hey. And Paul was very happy to see him. And, you know, he stands up, they shake hands, and I'm sitting there nursing my beverage, whatever it was. And Paul says, oh, this is John. He's one of the speakers tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. That's all I heard. And John sits down with us. Now, like I said, I'm kind of dragging ass a little bit here. I'm just way jet lagged, and I got nothing to say. I'm just looking to get to the bottom of the glass and get my head on the pillow. So I wasn't my normal social self because, I mean, I do a lot of these things. I got the social skills. I just wasn't feeling it. So nonetheless, I hoped that I wasn't rude to the guy who sat down, but I didn't have anything to say. I was holding my eyelids open with toothpicks. All right. Fast forward another day, and we're at the conference. And even though I'm there to give a presentation, I figured, hey, I might as well watch all the other speakers too. Maybe I'll learn something. Why not, right? I'm always learning. So I think it was after lunch, or maybe it was the end of the first day or whatever. And guess who's up on the stage? It's the guy, John, from the day before. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So he starts talking, and it turns out he's one of the most interesting people that I ever met in my life. This is a guy who used to run a trading desk at Goldman Sachs. And not one of the little ones. Like, he was a big, massive, successful trader. As I recall, if I'm not mistaken, he had a PhD in economics from MIT. I do remember that part. It was from MIT. Yeah, I think it was PhD. Yeah, it was a PhD in economics from MIT. And he was talking to one of his friends. I think it was in New York City. I don't know. I think he lives in London now. And his friend was a neuroscientist and said, yeah, listen, we're working on all this cool stuff. You should come by the lab. And apparently he goes by the lab and just got hooked, massively interested in this, and never looked back. Now, this guy's name, by the way, is John Coates. And he wrote a book that he talked about called The Hour Between Dog and Wolf. And we'll put that in the show notes. I think it's a great read for anybody who's interested in getting your brain right as a trader. So, strong recommendation there. So, in his new work and in his book and everything, he basically kind of combined his knowledge bases of being an incredible expert in trading and neuroscience. And he did some pretty amazing studies on the biology of financial risk taking. Now, kind of a funny and interesting part of his presentation is he talked about how he wanted to go and get another doctorate degree from MIT, this time in neuroscience, but they wouldn't give two PhDs. And so he wanted to give back his one in economics or something. I don't know. He was like very, very charming and a very, very good speaker, really engaging. So I was listening to this and I just became really, really fascinated, and something clicked. When I got home, maybe even before I got home, I ordered the book on Amazon, and upon arriving home, started turning the pages. And it kind of changed my life. And to this day, I kind of kick myself for not trying harder, maybe getting an espresso or something and talking to the guy a little bit more. But that was the last I saw or heard of him, was listening to him at the conference. So in this book, The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, Coates points out how trading decisions are not just made from logic. They're not just made from data with the left brain, but they're made in part as a result of the influences of a whole mess of physiology. Not just your brain, but all the things that your brain talks to through neurons. Things like cortisol and testosterone levels and activity within the nervous system, your paranervous system and your gut. Just pure biology. All these things that affect your decision making. And in one of his studies, this part I found really, really interesting. He showed that traders overall don't really know whether they're feeling stress or not. Isn't that crazy? He would go to this trading firm. He did this project, I guess, for months or something like that. And he wired up all the traders with EEG things, like the things that stick to your body and your head and stuff like that. And this would sense all the electrical impulses and cortisol levels and that kind of thing, which cortisol tends to spike when you're stressed. And at the end of the day, he would say, okay, you know, what's your stress level? And the answers that the traders gave didn't necessarily always match what their physiological chemistry said was true. I found that really, really interesting. There can be kind of a disconnect. I mean, sometimes there can be a big disconnect between what the mind is consciously thinking and what's happening in the rest of the body. Because remember, last week, we talked about there being different parts of the brain, and we talked about axons and neurons and all that kind of stuff. The prefrontal cortex, that part in the front of your brain where a lot of the logic and stuff comes from, like that's the new kid on the block. The cerebellum, your lizard brain, like that started in evolution back with lizards and stuff. And then the middle brain, the limbic system, once we got mammals on planet Earth here, that's what they used. This prefrontal cortex, I mean, it's new and it doesn't really always work like it's supposed to. Like it's a much more powerful microchip than the other stuff. but it's kind of still in beta in a lot of ways. The mind and lots of different parts of the mind and the body and lots of different parts of the body, things you wouldn't even think of, all come into play and all have a role in decision making. If trading is logical, these non cerebral influences that run counter to what the prefrontal cortex of your brain, the conscious brain, is thinking, these things, while they have the best intentions, they're there, like we talked about last week, to sort of save you from danger and shorten the decision making process. They can, a lot of times, contribute to worse decision making. And so this week, I want to talk about behavioral psychology and behavioral economics. Behavioral psychology is a way to approach how the mind processes stuff naturally by default. And behavioral economics, the way I think of it, is like sort of offshoot or a subset of behavioral psychology. It's kind of how the mind by default processes risk and risk taking just naturally. A really, really classic example that everybody and their mother is familiar with as far as behavioral psychology goes is Pavlov's dog, right? Pavlov, this is long, long time ago by now. He'd ring a bell and he'd give the dog a treat. Ring the bell, give the dog a treat. Ring the bell, give the dog a treat. Ring the bell. Wait. Oh, look, the dog's looking for the treat. It's literally salivating. Oh, interesting. This one thing connects to this other thing as an anchor. And there are just so many things that come into play as far as trading the wheel that relate to behavioral economics. There's just so many of these like little ways that your brain works that you don't even realize. I want to talk about a couple today, and they're kind of related. I want to talk about the availability bias and the recency bias. The availability bias and the recency bias are heuristics. Now, that means shortcuts or rules of thumb that your brain defaults to. And they're identified by a couple of guys by the name of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And I plan to talk about them a lot more next week. The availability bias is a heuristic in which people judge how likely something is based on how readily it comes to mind. And some of these biases, like you wonder, how the heck did they come up with the name of this? And I guess they're just trying to be clever and creative, and they're left brain scientists, so they don't have a lot of they have a lot of cleverness, but they don't have a lot of creativeness. And so they usually end up with a really weird connection to why they're called that. But the way my mind looks at it is the availability bias is how mentally available something is. And the recency bias is a heuristic in which people are biased in their assumptions of likelihood based on how recently a similar event has occurred. The more recently it's been observed, the more likely it's perceived to happen again. So let's talk a little bit first about the availability bias. So that can come into play. I mean, it can come into play a lot with anybody, but one area where it comes into play is with novice wheel traders in one of two ways. When an investor begins a new trading strategy of any sort, without any context of its results, you're trying this out for the first time, a string of favorable outcomes or unfavorable outcomes can quickly make it feel like that's what it should be going forward always. And that reminds me of a joke that my old boss, Jim Bittman, used to tell. you're not familiar with Jim Bittman, he's written some of the greatest classic books on option trader education. You should read up on them. He's really, really great. He taught me everything I know on how to teach option trading. But anyway, he used to tell this story, which I think was just actually a joke, but he presented it as a story. And he'd say that, oh, yeah, I was at this brokerage firm or advisor firm's offices, and I was going to give a seminar. And so I had to wait in the kitchen. And I was sitting at the table there by the coffee machine. And a couple of the advisors came in. And the one advisor says to the other, says, oh, yeah, I've got this new options client. The other one says, oh, well, how's it going? And so he says, well, his first 3 trades, he made money. And the other guy says, oh, poor bastard. Right? You make money on your first 3 trades. You think it's easy. This is the availability bias. That's all you know at that point. Oh, look, you just make the trade and the money shows up. Oh, great. And just imagine if the 5 first covered call trades that you ever make result in the stock rocketing up through the strike price and you miss out on a bunch of gains and you think, oh, geez, I've been long this stock for a while and the stock shoots up. Geez, this is terrible. Well, that's all the information that's available to you. I mean, you probably now think covered calls stink and that you're always going to leave money on the table and you might stop. And that's a fact. That happens all the time. I have talked to people who say, oh, yeah, covered calls. No, they stink. Every time I trade them, I leave money on the table. Doesn't make sense. Oh, so I quit them. But of course, if on your first 5 covered call trades, you make money, the stock just goes right up to the strike price. You make money on the stock. You roll your covered call up and out, do it again and make money. Oh, geez. Oh, this is great. I'm going to get rich doing this. You never have to adjust or buy something back for a negative scalp or anything like that. Never have to worry about that stuff. It can get in your head, and it does for the best of us because that's how your brain is supposed to work. And then, of course, the other one, the recency bias. It's not just frequency, but it's recency too. The most recent thing that happens is the freshest in your mind. So even if you've been trading the wheel for 6 months, oh no, the last 2 cash secured put trades got me assigned at a lousy price. Oh, geez, I think the market's different now. I don't think this strategy works anymore. I better stop. And I've talked to, I'm like, this is not something I'm making up. I've talked to tons and tons of investors who found themselves in that situation. The timing of the ideal trades and the unfortunate trades shouldn't affect how a trader feels about the overall strategy. What I like to call non-chronologically homogeneous outcomes. That's my fancy 10-cent phrase of the day. Non-chronologically homogeneous outcomes are part of the nature of statistics. Like imagine, for example, if you mathematically have a 90% chance of winning some game, okay? If you play it 10 times in a row, statistically, you should lose once. But if the first time you play, you lose, you're going to be like, oh, geez, I don't know. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'm only supposed to lose once. The first time I did it, oh, geez. Or the first 9 times you could win and then get spanked the last time. I guess if you know that it's actually going to work out, they're going to lose once. If you win the first 9 times, you know you're going to lose the last time. But that's also the thing, too. If it's just 10 times, you might win 10 times. Or you might lose 3 times. You need a much bigger sample size than just 10 times. But even with a big sample size, let's say you play 100 times, right? Okay, so that statistically you should lose 10 times. But I mean, you could end up losing like 5 or 6 or 7 times in a row. And then you're going to question things. Wait, is this die weighted? Somebody cheating? What's going on? And there's a third sort of one that kind of ties into this too. It's the heuristic called hyperbolic discounting. This was developed by George Ansley. And the gist is that humans prefer smaller immediate rewards to larger delayed rewards. This factors a lot into the psychology of cycle-recycle trading and the psychology of achieving compound returns in general. The cycle-recycle trade, it's kind of a strange bird in a lot of ways if you think about it, because it kind of requires sort of a hybrid mindset, a trader mindset and an investor mindset. It's this long-term payoff, right? Because we talked about cycles, right? You're making a lot of little trades over and over again. Sell this call, roll it, sell this call, roll it, get a sign, sell this put, roll it, sell this put, roll it, get a sign, sell this call. And you do a big long cycle of these that could last years, and that's the payoff. And the problem is that all those trades don't work out perfectly. A lot of times you have to buy them back for more than you paid for them. That's actually okay in the long run. I tell people, and this is what I put in my book, and it's really just a rule of thumb. I don't have any hard evidence to say that this is the number it should be. But I would say if you're looking at annualized returns, you should assume that in the long run, whatever your annualized return is you're calculating, that you're going to get back a third of it. Because you're going to have some trades that go a little against you, some trades that work out perfectly, some trades that work out pretty good, some trades that go terribly against you. In the long run, you're probably keeping a third of the aggregate option premium that you actually sell. That's about how much you actually keep. I'm estimating a third. Could it be a quarter for some people? Yeah. Could it be 40% for some people? Yeah, sure. But when that stuff is all clumped together, you got a clump of losers, it can really feel like a waste of time. It can even feel pretty counterproductive, particularly in trending periods where you sell a call and it goes through the strike and you buy it back for a loss and roll up and out. And then it goes through the strike again, buy it back for a loss, roll up and out. And then you buy it back again for a loss and roll it and it goes up and out. Man, you get a few of those in a row, and it can really start feeling demoralizing. I mean, I love covered calls in sideways trending markets, down markets, slow up markets, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you get these where they just massively explode to the upside, and it can be hard for anybody. We like small, immediate rewards more than we like larger delayed rewards. And the wheel is proven in white papers to provide large delayed rewards. And sometimes the short ones are good, but sometimes short ones are bad. So it all kind of ties in together. And so that about wraps it up for this show today. But before you go, don't miss a single episode. Please make sure that you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever it may be. And if you'd be so kind as to leave a comment, I would surely appreciate it. That helps us together grow this community, because when you get left a comment, the algorithm ranks you higher and more people get to see it. Hey, that being said too, a little word of mouth doesn't hurt either. Until next time, invest excellently.
Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. Before buying or selling an option, read characteristics and risks of standardized options. A link is provided in the show notes. To learn more about your host, Dan Passarelli, please visit markettaker.com.